God. In your bulletin, you'll see a picture, two-sided picture. I'm going to do something crazy in the sanctuary and ask you to talk to each other today. I know it might get wild, but I'm going to have two questions. So if you're not sitting next to somebody, you might want to scoot a little closer to somebody. Love to have built in the city of Cleveland? What kind of organization, what mission, what outreach, what institution, what school do you think that would make Cleveland somehow better? What does Cleveland need to be built? Think about that and share it with somebody next to you. Turn your paper over, you'll see a crumpled up blueprint. What do you think in Cleveland needs to be eradicated so that justice can flourish, so that great things can happen? What needs to be torn down? Not just an ugly building, but what kind of structure? Maybe it's immigration policy, maybe it's racism. What is it for you? Education. What is it that needs to also be torn down in order that God's justice will happen in this city? Helping people and going out in the community and doing big things. And social justice is a term today in our culture, I think, that's about as hot as going green was a couple years ago. I hear it from Hollywood elite, I hear it from politicians and NGOs, I hear it from just people at Starbucks drinking their coffee. What is social justice? I want to look just today back at Isaiah and see, does it match our common definition? Does it match what God says his justice is? So if you look at Isaiah 58 with me, what does it say about justice? I think it's startling. In verses 1, 2, and 3, we see a particular group of people being described. It says, day after day they seek God out. To seek God out in Hebrew scripture means to seek the Lord. It says that they're worshiping. They go to temple. They tithe. They keep the sacrifices. They follow the commands. They are diligent in their worship. And it says, day after day they seek me out. This is sustained worship, day after day. And then it says, they seem eager to know my ways. The word there actually is to be passionate. But I think in English, when we translate it, it's such a paradox and contradiction to the first verse. They do all of this stuff, so they seem to follow me. Well, the translation actually says that they do follow God's laws, that they are passionate about what God is about the laws. They look closely at the Ten Commandments, they fulfill the worship, their morality is pretty close to perfect. Yet they come to God and they say, we have fasted, but you haven't heard us. They come to God and say, we have this upstanding morality, we're keeping the law, we're keeping your commands, we're always praying, but you're not answering. Bad things are happening to us. They say, we've done all these good things, we've been obeying your rules. Why aren't you answering us? And God's answer is startling, folks. He says, let me tell you what a fast is. Let me tell you what worship is. What it means to seek me. Is it not to loose the bonds of wickedness, to undo the straps of the yoke, to let the oppressed go free, to break every yoke? Is it not to share your bread with the hungry, to bring the homeless poor into your house, when you see the naked, to cover them? Jesus goes on in Matthew 25, I think he draws on this and gives us a lot of clarity about what is God talking about. And Jesus talks about in Matthew 25 in the judgment day, the last time, what God is going to do. And he's separating people. And he says that the people on his left, he's going to say, "Depart from me, you cursed, into the eternal fire. For I was hungry, and you gave me no food. I was thirsty, you gave me no drink. I was a stranger, and you did not welcome me, naked, and you did not clothe me, sick and in prison, and you did not visit me." Then they also will answer, saying, "Lord, when did we see you hungry or thirsty, or a stranger, or naked, or sick, or in prison, and did nothing to minister to you?" Then he will answer them, saying, "Truly I say to you, as you did not do it to one of the least of these, you did not do it to me." Summary, this is what God says. If you don't love the poor, if you don't love the hungry, the naked, the homeless, if you don't love them, no matter what you say to me, you don't really have a relationship. You have a formal relationship, maybe full of compliance or some ordinances, but you don't have a true loving relationship with me. How you treat the poor, God says, tells me really how you think about me. So let me say this another way. A deep social conscience and a life poured out in deeds of service to others, especially the poor, we're told, is the inevitable sign of real faith and a real connection with God, a real loving relationship with Jesus Christ. How we treat the poor is really an index of our heart. Some people here might have rejected the Bible and what it says. Some of you here might accept the Bible and be a follower of Jesus. But whether you've accepted or rejected, you realize that at the heart of what you've accepted or denied is justice. The heart of biblical faith is a deep deliverance of human justice. That is pretty amazing. But what kind of justice is this? What does it look like? What kind of love is this? Isaiah tells us it's a justice that breaks yokes. It breaks systems. It doesn't just give money, it finds ways to empower people to get out of poverty. It actually works to destroy the very reason and institutions that have poverty, that create poverty. I know that's big stuff. Trust me, I tell this to middle school and high school kids. It's big, but it's what God calls for. Just some examples. I don't know how this is going to work out in your life. That's the great thing about Christianity. It's not a pat answer. You have to go forward and figure this out for yourself. I'll give you a few examples though. When I was in New York, there was a Christian group in Chinatown that found that within 3 to 6 months, a lot of the kids coming over from China, a lot of the middle school and high school kids there were flunking out of school. They weren't fitting in just because they didn't know the English language. A lot of the gangs in the area were telling them, "This isn't your country, man. We're your people." And these kids were quickly joining gangs. A lot of the girls falling into prostitution. All they needed was English. And so we went down and we mentored them and hung out with them and ate lunch with them. And we taught them English. You know, years later when I got an email from one of the kids, Philip, saying, "I made it to college," man. He got out of that system. That led me later on in LA when an organization I worked for saw that the dropout rate in Hollywood of Latino youth was 50%. That means I'm looking at one kid going, "You're making it, you're doomed." 50%. We started a tutoring program and a drop-in center for them. These kids stopped becoming statistics. Stopped being 14 and 13 and being pregnant, which led to more school dropouts, which led to gangs, which led to prison, which led to not having good income, which led to ruining their families. Just by them being tutored, by being able, a lot of them stayed in school. They had a place to go. They broke that cycle of their family where their father or their uncle had been in prison, and they told me sometimes, "I'm going too." They got off those rails. It was broken. One more example. Human trafficking seems to be everywhere. When I lived in LA, it was surprising how many people were trafficked. And I worked at a Thai church, and we had many women who were trafficked into different sex trades. Surprisingly, there was a lot of men who were trafficked for welding work, farm work, construction jobs, and the paradise they had been promised turned into living in a shipping container, their visa snatched from them. Thai Community Center in Hollywood asked our church to just come down and if we could help run and host some seminars for them. There were lawyers who were trying to get their traffic visas, but they needed to interview these people. Our only skill was that we could speak Thai and speak English. And so we facilitated these and ran these interviews, and these guys got out. God's justice says, share your bread with the hungry. In Hebrew, that means literally serving them and waiting on them yourself. It's touching lives, contact. Again, I don't know how that's going to look in your life. That's why I asked you those questions. What passion do you have? What dream has God put in your heart? What do you see that needs to be torn down for shalom? What do you think needs to be built up to have people flourish? You feeling guilty yet? I come from a family of ministers. I know guilt is an easy tool to wield, okay? But that's not the point, because it doesn't last and it's not motivation. And guilt is not going to make us the kind of people who do God's justice. So as we close, just one more question. How are we going to be those people who do Isaiah 58 kind of justice, the kind that God requires? You know, Monday, some of our youth here and some of our adults are brave, and they're going to come with me to study and discuss other religions. We're going to go around and talk about religions. And you see something that stands out in a lot of religions. They all have this kind of same concept. People should be helped. Poor should be helped. Social justice hipsters have the same idea. We need to help people. But as I look at these different religions and I look at what our culture says is justice, I don't see it adding up to what God wants. In so many other religions, doing good is a way to get God's grace. It's a way to earn God's love, to get His blessing, to get your agenda met, to get God on your side. And I think it's easy when we come to these passages to say, oh, I get it. Here's what God's saying. God's saying, okay, your worship, you're doing a great job. Personal morality, good job. Social justice, not so good. So I got to figure it out. You know what's missing? My list just wasn't long enough. I need to do those things and add some good works in. I think if we think that, though, we miss the whole point. Isaiah 58 is a critique of the kind of religion that seeks to add another thing to your moral to-do list. If we think that we're doing justice so God will send us to heaven, we miss the critique. Because what I see that a lot of us are seeking to do justice for is just the self-centeredness, which actually is what made the world an unjust mess in the first place. Trying to do good works to get something for ourselves, even if it means our own moral record, is not actually helping our hearts. It's actually fortifying and making it worse by covering it over with religion. Doing justice for God is not the way to get God's love. It's simply a response to God's love. It's a response to it. Struggling for shalom, plunging yourself, your resources, your energy, your skills, your talents into this community to fix it is a response to how much Jesus has plunged himself into your heart. Doing justice is simply respond to God's grace. And I think we're only going to do as much justice for others as we know how much Jesus has done for us. Has He freed you from slavery? Has He given you a new life? Has He put hope into your hopeless world? Has He canceled your debts? Has He loved you when you were His enemy?